but they started too little, too late. And take their third loss of the season and their second loss at the hands of the LA Clippers. Final score, Clippers 102, Warriors 99. A thriller here at the Intuit Dome, and it results in a loss, and the Warriors hope to get back on the winning track Wednesday night at Chase Center as they take on the Atlanta Hawks.
The wall holds at the Intuit Dome, and the Warriors in their first trip to Steve Ballmer's, creation. Some might call it a monstrosity. Some might call it, the Inglewood place to be. But nonetheless, the Warriors, for the second time this season, cannot defeat the Los Angeles Clippers. They've lost up here at home. They lose now down south in L.A., and I appreciate everyone joining us first and foremost for a kind of a late edition of Warriors Wrap-Up, of course, presented by Xfinity. Evan Giddings with you here on 95.7 The Game, and the Warriors fall, as you heard from the great Tim Roy, 102-99. A close game that I'm not necessarily sure anybody thought that with the whole game that they put out tonight that they deserved to win, but they had a chance to steal that game down the stretch. Down basically 10 points with 2.5 minutes left. A late flurry. A couple of pretty decent looks in that final possession. Golden State had an opportunity to at least take that game to overtime and maybe see if they could wrap up a win. But nonetheless, the Los Angeles Clippers, in my personal opinion, deserve to win this basketball game. And, the Warriors, I think it was probably their first real chance that they had down the stretch of clutch time in which they didn't come out on the right side, at least notably so. Last year, again, they lost 11 games by 3 points or less. That was the most in the NBA. So far this season, they are number one in clutch time as far as net rating is concerned. But tonight, the Clippers got the best of them. And I think there's a little bit of a discussion about that last play because I saw some people, with that last, sequence, the two things to me that stood out were number one, Gary Payton II taking the final shot. And what led to that event was, number one, him being in the game in the first place for defensive purposes, which I think was proven correct by Kerr on the fact that he was able to force the steal in the first place on Norman Powell. He helped get the Warriors a couple of looks. And then before he took that shot, I thought it was interesting that Lindy Waters III, who has started the past two games in the absence of DeAnthony Melton, he had a look in the corner. If you go and run that play back, Curry, before he took his first shot, kicks it to Waters III in the corner. And Lindy had an open three, and he didn't take it. Now, understandably so, it's probably the first situation in the regular season in which Waters has had a chance to hoist a game-tying, potential game-winning shot, one of those big moment looks, and understandably wants to make sure that Curry is taking that shot, which he did. And I thought Curry got, a decent contested three-pointer off. It was one that everyone and their mom in the Clippers is trying to get a hand up in front of Curry. So to get that first look, I thought was decent. And then the second one off of a pretty good effort and an offensive rebound by Draymond Green, 9 of which he had tonight. Curry finds Gary Payton II after basically pulling 3 Clippers to him in the left wing, and GP2 just missed a, relatively straight-on open 3. I did think the pass originally was supposed to go to Waters, and Curry kind of points at Lindy if you look at the play right after the horn blows, and the Warriors unfortunately lose. But a lot to kind of unpack on that singular play, and I think first and foremost, it wasn't a question to me of whether or not GP2 should have been in the game. You obviously don't prefer that he takes the shot, but it's an open look, and that's about as good of an opportunity as you're going to get with a 3 to put you into overtime. But the second part was I was a little curious if Steve Kerr was going to use his final timeout, and there's a couple of schools of thought about that. Number one, you want to let the play kind of unpack itself because then you can get the Clippers or a particular opponent a little bit frazzled. The defense has a chance to break down off of the offensive rebound. A timeout could be plausible, but then you also allow the defense to reset, and you give the Clippers, who I think have a pretty damn good head coach in Tyronn Lue, I'm sure Kerr would tell you the same, you give Tyronn Lue a chance to not only set his defense, but also communicate the fact that they can foul the moment that ball is inbounded. The Warriors might not have even got a three-point shot off. So that entire final sequence from the Warriors was one that I thought You could have played a little bit differently, maybe a timeout earlier in the possession before Curry has to take kind of a difficult shot. But again, I thought they had an opportunity of Waters one in the corner to get a good three off. And at the end of the day, they had 2 back rim 3-point misses in a game that shouldn't have even come down to that shot. The Clippers nearly fumbled the bag down the stretch of that game after going up by 10 again with 2.5 left. They led by as many as 15 in this game. I thought the Clippers deserved to win this game with how they played offensively. James Harden, about as good as it gets, pretty much playing point the entire night and distributing 14 assists. And then Norman Powell, the primary scorer for this basketball team. You wondered where the Clippers were going to find offense after a season in which Paul George gets moved to, Philadelphia, signs there as a free agent. Kawhi Leonard is hurt and on the shelf per usual. Where are they going to get this offense from? And Norman Powell's been the answer. He had 20-plus points in the first meeting on October 26th against the Warriors. He also had another 20-burger and a couple of big threes, 3 of which in the fourth quarter down the stretch against Golden State. So, Norman Powell was kind of the Clippers closer, so to speak. And overall, the Warriors were just not good enough. And I think the Warriors, this is a game that you can point to the final play. You can look at everything in the second half. I thought the third quarter, they were pretty good defensively. But overall, the Warriors just did not play well enough to win this basketball game. And it was because they didn't make enough free throws. The starters did not play extremely well, particularly in the first half. Curry had it going offensively in the second half. I thought Draymond Green overall played a pretty good game, had a near triple-double, but they turned the basketball over 19 times. And in 2 games against the Clippers now, they've turned it over a total of 40 times. Tonight, it cost them 31 points. And although that points off of turnover margin wasn't as drastic as maybe the difference in turnovers, 19 giveaways along with 10 misses at the free throw line. You're not supposed to, number one, win those games. Number two, you're not supposed to be in those games. And the Golden State Warriors had a chance to take it. So, I'm left with kind of an optimistic flavor right now because the Warriors at the end of the day are 10-3. They still remain near the top of the Western Conference. But this was absolutely a winnable game if they didn't come out so flat. And that was a bit, I guess, dissatisfying to watch just because I thought they played pretty well up until the final maybe 5 minutes against Memphis, and the Warriors might tell you the referees had something to do with that. I thought they played extremely well last week against Dallas, and you wondered if they would play up to the Clippers because of what happened the first time, but it felt like the letdown game that might have been sort of aimed at Friday instead was on Monday. So, I think the Warriors got caught a little bit against a Clippers team that also, quite frankly, seems to have their number. And we can get into as to why that's the case. I think that the game itself, the loss, obviously, not ideal, but some of the underlying reasons as to why they lost this basketball game to me are far more interesting. And I do want to get your guys' takes and women's takes out there at 888-957-9570. Evan Giddings with you on 95.7 The Game. This is Warriors wrap-up after the Warriors get beaten by the Los Angeles Clippers by a score of 102-99. Late 8-0 run, falls a bit short. 7-0 run, pardon me, had a chance to tie the game. 2 missed threes, Curry, Gary Payton II at the horn, and they fall to the Clippers for the second time this season. They are 0-2 against the Los Angeles Clippers. They are 10-1 against the rest of the NBA. This is from the 510 the Comcast Business text line. The starters played poorly. Draymond, 6 turnovers. Waters, 6 points in 28 minutes. Hield, 8 points in 23 minutes. 9 of 19 on free throws. All of which completely fair. Also tacking on from the 510, who was supposed to guard Powell? Norman Powell. Stormin' Norman. It was wide open for threes. Yes, he was. I thought he got lost a couple of times when James Harden was basically dancing and did a nice job of collapsing the defense. I think the Warriors overall defensively, they didn't play poorly. They gave up 102 points, which in the modern game is not a lot, but they scored a season low tonight, 99. And so the first part of the 510's message to me is the part to dig into. The starters tonight absolutely came out flat. And if you're going to ask me where the Warriors lost this basketball game, in my opinion, it was in the first half. They were absolutely horrendous. That was a hideous first half of offensive basketball from the Dubs. And you just look at their shooting splits. 45% from the floor, respectable. 33% from three-point range, not very good. And then maybe the kicker, 4 of 10 at the free throw line. along with 13 turnovers. They had 7 of which in the first quarter, 6 in the second quarter. So they cleaned up the giveaways in that second half, but they had already kind of done too much damage to themselves. The fact that the Warriors were only down by 11 at the break, I actually thought was kind of a good sign that they still had a chance to go out and win this game, because they should have been down by 20. Talking with Chris O'Connell, who's right now chopping up highlights, and we'll have Steve Kerr for you in just a little bit. We were both pretty, well, not necessarily supportive, but we were enthusiastic about the fact that the Warriors were only down by 11, because they didn't do much, if anything at all, good in that first half. Specifically the starters. The second unit had a nice stint. The combination of Kuminga, particularly Moses Moody, I was impressed by tonight. And then Brandon Podziemski didn't have a great second half, but I thought he, along with Kuminga and Moody, and even Slow-Mo off the bench, they had a nice real stretch of basketball sort of towards the tail end of that first quarter that I thought stabilized things. The Warriors, who went down by as many as 15, got it to single digits, and then kind of jockeyed back and forth in that second quarter until Curry and the rest of the offense basically came alive at the beginning of the third quarter. But the bench was probably the best part, just by process of elimination in that first half, because Curry and Wiggins, I believe, were both minus 17s in the first half. Draymond Green wasn't necessarily better. And the other part about the Clippers, too, is we've seen now the 3 losses that the Warriors have are to the Cleveland Cavaliers, obviously, who are 15-0. First team to do that since your 2015-16 73-win Warriors. And the Clippers, who have now beat them twice. What do those 2 teams have in common is, I would say, 5s, but particularly skilled bigs. And I wouldn't necessarily put Jared Allen in that category, although he's a physical presence you have to be aware of. But Evan Mobley really hurt Golden State in that game. And I thought tonight, Zubats, though he didn't play a ton, at least as far as minutes, he was a load to handle. Ivica Zubats, I apologize, 36 minutes tonight. It felt like he didn't really finish this game, just perhaps because of free throw shooting. But it was a plus 21 in those 36 minutes, 17 rebounds, 16 of them defensive. So it might not feel like he was killing them on the offensive glass, but what he was doing was making sure that the Warriors, number one, were one and dones. And then on the offensive end, he basically drew whoever was in the middle to him. And I think specifically this is where the Trayce Jackson-Davis and Draymond Green combination can be taken advantage of, because TJD, in my opinion, he's still very young. He had nice stints tonight, but Zubats got the better of him for the majority of the time he was on the floor. They missed Looney tonight, in my opinion, because that's an option that Kerr can at least go to. Looney wasn't particularly great in their first meeting against Zubats, but as a more veteran presence, I think he has a better chance of figuring it out over the course of the game. And I think Kerr probably would have gone to him more if he was available tonight, but he was out due to illness. What that means is that when Trayce Jackson-Davis in this particular game is not playing well, is that Kerr either has to basically just live with it, of him getting not abused, but beaten, or he's going to have to go away from TJD, which he ended up doing because Trayce Jackson-Davis only played 20 minutes in this game, and he has to go small. And that means that the Warriors' interior defense is basically just manned by Draymond Green, and that collapses everything. Draymond isn't allowed to be the floating defensive player where I believe he's at his best. He can play the 5 for stretches, and did so, for example, at the end of the game against Dallas last Tuesday, where he was magnificent on the interior. But over the course of 32 minutes, if he's playing 15 to 16, if he's playing more than half his minutes or thereabouts at the 5, I just feel like the Warriors are not as good defensively, and offensively, they don't have, I don't know, I guess as much of an interior presence, and that was also something that Zubats did. He was altering shots at the rim. The Warriors, who didn't shoot that well from 3-point range tonight, weren't able to get much on the inside against Zubats and the Clippers. So, overall, I think the Clippers tonight, they hit a ton of threes compared to, what they've been shooting prior to, 47%, 16 of which from distance. They made their free throws. Their turnovers didn't kill them up until the very end. And I thought that defensively, they did a really good job on the Warriors. But overall, this game, it came down to a final flurry. I don't think the Warriors deserved to win, but they had a chance to steal. And overall, why the Warriors lost this game, to me, it's because of the correctables. And that in one breath is a positive because they are correctable, but in another breath, it's interesting that they happen both times against these Clippers. And that is turnovers, 19 of which tonight, 40 total of which over these two games and two losses against LA. What led to it, points off turnovers or the impact from it, and then missed free throws. And the free throws are something that isn't just, or hasn't been so far, just a Clippers or a Cleveland specific game. Like, they have not been a good free throw shooting team. In fact, they've been the worst free throw shooting team in the association. And that's so strange to say with Steph Curry, one of the greatest free throw shooters and just plain shooters of all time on your roster. But the one thing, and the Warriors were absolutely correct at this point, I think they've been proven so, to remove Klay Thompson as well as Chris Paul from their equation. Players were getting older, defensively compromised, juice not worth the squeeze as far as their contracts are concerned, and they were able to bring in a lot of fresher, younger legs that have helped the Warriors also in their depth. But the one thing that Klay Thompson and Chris Paul always did was make free throws. In fact, Klay Thompson, I believe last year was the number one free thrower in terms of percentage in the NBA. And over the course of the last 2 or 3 seasons, the Warriors haven't really had to worry about free throw shooting because generally they've had two of the best on the floor at the same time, being Curry and Klay. And even if you go back a couple of years ago to when they won the championship, I do think it was a bit under the radar, the fact that Jordan Poole was about, if not north of 90% at the free throw line. So on that team, you had 3 guys that could get to the stripe at times, not volume free throw shooters. I think Poole might have even taken more than Steph that season. But you had 3 guys that you could rely on stepping to the stripe and knocking down 2. I think tonight, the only player that made both free throws in a singular trip was Andrew Wiggins. Curry did not get to the free throw line at all tonight. You look at Draymond Green, 1 of 2. Jonathan Kuminga, 1 of 4. He's somebody that you expect to get to the free throw line and at least knock them down at a respectable clip. Last season, Jonathan Kuminga was at about 74 to 76% as far as his free throw percentage is concerned. This year, he's close to 60. So he's taken a step back. And that's something that needs to improve because he, along with Wiggins, are probably their 2 highest volume free throw shooters. Curry is not a guy that historically has gotten to the free throw line all that often. So Kuminga goes 1 for 4. Pods even, who actually is a good free throw shooter, at least so far in his NBA career, goes 1 of 3. Trace Jackson Davis 0 for 2. As a team, they didn't even get to the line compared to where they've been over the previous few games that much. 19 attempts was one more than the Clippers, but 19 attempts for this Warriors team has actually been relatively low. But 9 free throw makes is just simply unacceptable. Number one, you're leaving 10 points on the board, and you could just do the math and say that's the difference in this game. But number two, it completely disrupts the flow of whatever you're doing offensively. And I think that's a big part of this too. One of the reasons that the Warriors, I think it was against the Houston Rockets a couple Saturdays ago, when they blew the 31-point lead and then ended up going back to win in overtime. You go look at the amount of misses from that basketball game at the stripe, it's staggering. Like, that game should not have been a game because of how many free throws the Warriors missed, but also when the Rockets began to make their run through the end of the third quarter, at the beginning of the fourth quarter, what was there consistently for Golden State outside of missed shots? It was free throw attempts. And when they got to the free throw line tonight, not even the feeling of, are they going to make it, are they not, but just interrupting what the Warriors are trying to get doing offensively, I think really hurt them and has hurt them, through the first, 13 games of this season. So that's something to keep an eye on as well. When you miss free throws, it is essentially a turnover. And that's also, I believe, why the Warriors lost this game. The Warriors lost this game because of turnovers and missed free throws. But when you miss 10 free throws, that's essentially 5 times you're getting to the stripe. That's 5 empty possessions. So the Warriors really had closer to 25 turnovers in this game. And they had, I believe it was 21 the first time they played the Clippers. So they have just given almost 45 possessions in 2 games to a Los Angeles Clippers team that beat them relatively handedly in their first game when Curry got hurt. But tonight, this game came down to the wire. The Warriors got outplayed in Los Angeles, in my opinion. But they absolutely could have stolen this basketball game. And so that's why moving forward, in regards to clutch time, that is something to keep an eye on. When you're the worst free throw shooting team in the league, you got problems. And I don't think it's as simple a fix of, oh, we'll just get in the gym and get to the free throw line. Like these guys, outside of Curry, appeared to kind of need to look themselves in the mirror. You can't be getting to the free throw line and missing one, splitting, or missing both, especially at the clip that they've been doing it, because it ruins the momentum of your offense. It gives momentum to the opposition, and it gives you what the Warriors had a ton of tonight and otherwise, which is just empty possessions. And that's going to lead to a season-low 99 points. That's going to lead to a 3-point defeat, and it's going to leave you with your head hanging, wondering, how did we lose that basketball game? Again, I don't know if they should have been in it, but defensively, this team, I thought, played at a high enough level to win this game. Offensively, they were atrocious, and that's the reason why they lost. 888-957-9570 is the number. Evan Giddings with you on Warriors Wrap-Up here on 95.7 The Game. I want to take a quick break, come back and play Steve Kerr if we have that on the other side, Cam. Okay, we do. So we'll step aside and listen to Steve Kerr discuss the 102-99 defeat for the Golden State Warriors, because I think there's a couple of interesting things to unpack, and I have a couple of larger picture thoughts as to why the Clippers specifically not only, were able to kind of hurt the Warriors tonight. They beat them twice in the first 13 games of the season, but also what about them really gives the Warriors fits? And that might be something to keep an eye on moving forward. All right, 888-957-9570 is the number if you want to call in. Also the number for the Comcast Business Text line. This is Warriors Wrap-Up with Evan Giddings. We'll be back after this on 95.7 The Game.
Presenting Again Flings Love.
Now back to Warriors Wrap Up on 95.7 The Game.
That was the great Tim Roy after the Warriors fall short in a kind of a 7-0 spurt down the stretch there. 2:30 felt like the game was over. Warriors made it a game, and then two final looks. One from Steph Curry, one from Gary Payton II at the horn, fall short, and the Warriors do as well, 102-99. And as we kind of think about this game here on Warriors Wrap-Up, it's one that I think is interesting to dissect because in the grand scheme of things, the Warriors are still 10-3, and the Warriors are still off to a magnificent start to their season. I don't think this is a loss that is puncturing by any means. I don't think it's a necessarily deflating one, and the reason is because they didn't play well enough to win, and I think they understand that. And I think two people, to me, probably are ones that have the best, I don't know if mentality is the way to put it, but at least from the quotes that were leaking out after this game, one of which was from Draymond Green. I think he is someone that understands, just how close they were to victory, but also in one sense, how close they were to winning as far as the score goes, but how far they were in regards to how they played tonight. And so that's something that you can take one of two ways. I think it's one that you can take and say, well, damn, okay, so in the first half, they missed 6 free throws. They shot 33% from 3. They turned the ball over 13 times, 19 for the game, and they were only down by 11. They cut it to 3, and they almost had a chance to take it overtime. So from that standpoint, the Warriors played a C- basketball game and still nearly had a chance to steal it in extra time. That's one part. The other part is, for example, free throw shooting is something that is, might regress to the mean a little bit. But if you're worst, if you're last in the league, if you're 30th of 30 teams, and I believe after tonight missing 10, going 9 for 19, they have officially dipped below 70% in that realm. You do wonder how much better of a free throw shooting team they can get, and you wonder. Well, it seems like the 408 of the Comcast Business Text line is wondering, will people now hack a Warrior? That's a throwback to the Hack-a-Shack from the mid-2000s and 2010s when Shaquille O'Neal would just get absolutely pummeled by teams because he couldn't make free throws. From the 650, too many unforced turnovers. That I certainly agree with, and that was something that Draymond Green spoke about. Before we get to Draymond Green, though, I do want to listen to Steve Kerr, head coach of the Golden State Warriors, was asked about a couple of different things tonight, the free throws being one of them. But here was his full comments after the 102-99 loss in L.A. And so that was Steve Kerr after the 102-99 loss to the Los Angeles Clippers. A reminder that you're listening to 95.7 The Game, KGMZ FM, and HD1 San Francisco, always live on the free Odyssey app, Twitch, and YouTube, powered by First NorCal Credit Union. Yeah, I think from what I hear from Kerr, there's a few things that come to mind. Number one, it is encouraging that, again, you played a C to C-minus game on the road against a relatively solid opponent. I know the Clippers came in at 7-7, but if you look at the teams that they've lost to, I think all but one of them are teams that are expected to contend this season. And the Clippers are a solid team. They are versatile defensively. They are long. They're athletic. And they also have a lot of chemistry. They have players that have played together, all of which who are veterans in this league. They have, I think, one particular matchup problem for the Warriors and Zubats, and I think teams that have, athletic or skilled centers are certainly some things to keep an eye on for the Warriors. But overall, it's an encouraging performance from the standpoint that you came down to the wire with a team that you had no business being in the game with. And unfortunately, that same opponent got you earlier in the season. And so you start to wonder, well, is it a Clippers thing? Is it something bigger than that? But I also think that this is probably the first time I've seen the Warriors come out flat. Number one, lose a game, but play particularly poorly for an extended period of time. The only other game that I can recall that they were this bad off the jump in the first quarter, because remember against the Clippers, the first time they played them, they scored 34 points in the first half. Offensively, they found themselves early. The first game they played against New Orleans in the back-to-back, they were down 20 in the first quarter, but they only played one quarter poorly. They stormed back in the second quarter. They cut it to, I think, single digits at the half. They ran away with that basketball game. This was the first time of the 2024-25 season in which the Warriors came out flat and played flatly for an extended period of time. And it was because of turnovers, number one. That's where you start. But then again, the missed free throws are something that I think is not just a momentum killer, but it's also a momentum preventer. You're not allowed, even when you're not shooting the ball well, to get into a rhythm when you're giving teams extra possessions and you yourself are enduring empty possessions because of how many free throws they missed. Again, I'll put it mathematically like this. To me, it was 19 turnovers in this game for the Warriors, but also 5 essential empty possessions because you missed 10 free throws. That's 24 to 25 turnovers in this basketball game, and that's not going to help you win. And even with that, they still had a chance to tie it and send it to overtime. So overall, it was discouraging from the standpoint that I do believe that free throw problem is an issue that is going to stay with the Warriors. Can it get better? Sure, but you're last in the league. I don't know if you're all of a sudden just going to become a top 5 group or top 10 group the way they've been in years past. That's one thing, but it's encouraging from the standpoint that you played so poorly and still had a position to steal this basketball game on the road against a team that I think is a lot better than I expected to be coming into this season. Let's take a listen to Draymond Green, who talked after this basketball game. And Draymond, I thought, was pretty candid, as he always is. And here's why he said he did not do very well tonight. This is a short back and forth with Draymond.
Too many missed bunnies. Yeah, I just sucked tonight.
Well, I mean, I think Draymond's particularly hard on himself. It wasn't his best game. There's no doubt about that. Here's what he had to say about the turnovers in the first half.
Yeah, it set a tone. We turned the ball over I think we had 12 or 13 turnovers in the first half. And they had, at halftime, like 23 points off those turnovers, And so you hold a team to 102 points, give up 31 points off turnovers. Defense was pretty good, but you can't defend those turnovers. And like I said, I was awful. So that's on me.
Yeah, the turnovers, by the way, led to 31 points for the Clippers. I mean, it wasn't as if offensively they did a ton of things outside of make threes. They made 16 of 18 at the free throw line, but getting to the free throw line 18 times isn't, an outlandish total. 16 of 34 from distance is pretty decent, but the Warriors, relatively speaking, kept them out of the paint. They only shot 43% from the field, did the Clippers, And I thought the Warriors, specifically in that third quarter, with the bench unit that I thought played well, did a damn good job of limiting the Clippers. Unfortunately, it's like when you have those kinds of turnovers and those missed free throws, it also highlights some of the little mistakes, such as Buddy Hield fouling a three-point shooter at the end of the third quarter. And that's not the difference in the basketball game, because I believe Coffey went 2 of 3 from the free throw line. But those kinds of little mistakes pop up over the course of the game when you're involved in a tight one like this and you don't basically put your best foot forward. So I think Draymond Green's right that the turnovers set the tone for this basketball game, but then they were exasperated or highlighted by the fact that they missed so many free throws. And the one thing that I think was most encouraging to me about this game, like why I wouldn't be overreacting to it whatsoever, number one, it's your third loss of the season. But number two, your defense was still pretty damn good. And I understand down the stretch, Norman Powell got busy. Look, he went 9 for 15 from the floor, had 5 of 6 from distance. The fact that he didn't play more in this basketball game is probably something to ask, because he played 26 minutes compared to James Harden, who played 41. Amir Coffey played 29 in this game. Terrence Mann had 23 minutes. Batum, who also shot it well from distance, played 20 minutes. The Clippers have a lot of wings, and that's, I think, one thing that I'm keeping an eye on moving forward for the Warriors. They beat Boston, who at full strength have a good set of wings, but Brown wasn't in that game. They're missing Porzingis, who adds size. The Oklahoma City Thunder also have a lot of length and have quality athletic wings. But Chet Holmgren obviously affects what they do defensively. Not having Hartenstein prevents them from really throwing a true 5 or a true big at Golden State. So how are the Warriors going to measure up against teams, whether it be at full strength or not? The Clippers are not at full strength. They don't have Kawhi Leonard, nor do they have, I guess, PJ Tucker, however you want to throw them in there. But what they have is a bevy of bodies in Derrick Jones Jr., who's a good defender, Batum, maybe a bit over the hill, but at least offers size. Terrence Mann, who's quick. Amir Coffey is long. Kevin Porter Jr. is not a great defender, but at least long enough. And, of course, that's 4 or 5 guys right there. If you want to throw Chris Dunn in the mix, you can. But that's 4 or 5 players that are switchable enough defensively to at least make the Warriors have to work for what they get. And when you miss that many free throws, then it's dependent on how well you shoot the ball from 3. Because without Looney, they pretty much had to go to a small lineup. They weren't getting a ton inside, whether Zubats was on or off the floor. And the Warriors made 16 threes, which is good, but the 36.4% is not something that we've become accustomed to seeing. So they got close to 45 looks off, but they needed to make a few more, obviously. Well, really one more to send it to overtime. But if they're not getting as much on the inside, you need to see that three-point. I would love to see that three-point percentage come up a bit higher. And how is that going to play? Is that going to be something that can regress in a positive fashion to the mean against a team like the Clippers? Because the Clippers, at least so far, have proven themselves to be a bad matchup for the Warriors. But looking ahead, there aren't a ton of teams that have the amount of wings that the Clippers do, and that also have the kind of chemistry and veteran cohesion that they offer. But Atlanta's coming in off a win tonight. They'll see them on Wednesday. That's a team that's pretty young, that's pretty long. New Orleans has been banged up, so they probably won't have a challenge from that standpoint against the Pelicans. But San Antonio is also a young and long team. And then after that, a couple of weeks later, you'll see Oklahoma City again, Phoenix, Denver, Houston, Minnesota. Those are all teams that I think are a bit more equipped defensively to disrupt what the Warriors are trying to do on the offensive end. So how are the Warriors going to, find their scoring when they're not at full strength? Because also two things tonight, I think 2 absences did hurt them a little bit. Number one, Looney, I think he would have been able to aid them in their matchup against Zubats, and we went through that earlier. But also, DeAnthony Melton is somebody that I don't know if we know enough about yet, because he's been hurt with a back, missed 5 games, and now with a sprained ACL, he's going to miss probably at least a couple of weeks, if not more. DeAnthony Melton gives something to the Warriors that I thought was glaring tonight, and that is an additional ball handler alongside Steph that can, maybe he's not a Chris Paul assist to turnover ratio player, but he can handle the ball and not force, number one, Curry to be on ball all the time. And he got a little bit loose with it, specifically in the first half. But then he also doesn't force Draymond Green to be the secondary primary ball handler. And while Draymond is decent at taking care of the basketball, or more than decent usually, he's going to have nights like tonight if he's on the ball as much as he is, even in 32 minutes, where he's extremely sloppy. When he has to handle the ball that much, he is going to have particularly games like tonight where he turns the ball over 6 times. And that's why I think Podziemski is a player that, he's going to play non-Steph minutes. It was literally Curry for 32, Podziemski for 16. But I do wonder if moving forward, Kerr goes to Podziemski a bit more just to have somebody else who can handle the ball. And is Pods Fort Knox with the rock? Not necessarily. But he also takes pressure off of Curry, and I think most importantly, Draymond Green. Having three guys who can handle the ball out there, I think is something that the Warriors should try to lean into a little bit more. And I think that's also why probably Lindy Waters plays more than, say, Moses Moody, who I thought was fantastic tonight. I thought the combination of Moody and Kuminga were very good when deployed, really, especially at the end of the first quarter. Kuminga got a bit trigger happy in the second half, but overall, 12 points in 19 minutes, took a lot of shots. He played how he's supposed to coming off the bench. Buddy Hield didn't have a good game shooting the basketball, and when he doesn't shoot it well, doesn't always help you as much as you'd like. Gary Payton II was in for defensive purposes, but also he was kind of the player that Kerr went to when TJD either got played off the floor or he took him out. He would put Gary at the second forward position. And, Kyle Anderson is a guy that at least can initiate offense, but he's certainly not bringing the ball up. So without Melton, the Warriors don't have that second ball handler alongside Curry. And that's something that I don't know if that's necessarily going to change over the course of the season, either because Melton isn't a true point, he's kind of a combo guard, or, the Warriors are going to be in a position where they're not going to have one of those two guys because Melton is not proven himself so far that he can stay on the court for an extended period of time. So those would be two things that I would look at and say, all right, that's a receipt I'm going to put in the back pocket, not overreacting yet, but how do the Warriors react to, pretty, I would say, a pressured on-ball defense from teams that are long and switchable, like the Los Angeles Clippers, and how are they going to take care of the basketball without someone outside of Curry and Draymond that can handle the rock? Is Pods going to be involved more alongside Steph? Are they going to try and, I don't know, maybe bring the ball up with other players and have Curry play more off ball? I'm not exactly sure how Steve Kerr is going to go to the whiteboard and adjust this thing, but that's something that I do feel like needs to be looked at a little bit more, and that is more correctable than, say, making free throws. You'd love to see them make more free throws, but I'm not sure how far that percentage at last in the NBA is going to be able to rise, it just suddenly flip on its head. So as far as correctable things, those are a couple of things that I would like to see. But the Warriors have a couple of days to get it done. They're going to be at home before the rest of the kind of mini 3 out of 4 road trip on Friday against New Orleans, San Antonio on Saturday for a back-to-back down south. But on Wednesday, they take on the Atlanta Hawks at 7 o'clock. Warriors Live, Mark Graney is going to have that for you coming up at 6 o'clock on Wednesday as Warriors wrap up. Tim Roy back on the call as always. The Atlanta Hawks coming back to town. Atlanta has been somewhat of a formidable opponent as of late, 7-8 right now, but they beat the Sacramento Kings in slight fashion tonight, 109-108. They've won 3 of 4, including, I would say, their most impressive win of the season last Tuesday against Boston. That was a game that snuck under the radar because of Clay night, but the Hawks also beat the Boston Celtics on the road, mind you, 117-116. So they're playing some better basketball. Gonna take a look at the number 1 overall pick, Zachary Risachet, Trae Young, always a comp to Steph Curry light, I would say. But they got a team that's beginning to find itself under Quinn Snyder, so we'll see if the Warriors can handle them at home on Wednesday night. That'll do it for us here as far as Warriors wrap-up is concerned for this evening. Big thank you to Cam Williams along with us, as always, our network coordinator here for the Warriors. Big thank you to Chris O'Connell back here cutting things and making sure that all the sound you hear is tip-top shape A+ as always. Thank you to everybody that has tuned in. Thank you to everybody that's chimed in. Comcast Business Text Line, people that continue to call in. Love the conversation, the back and forth as always. My name is Evan Giddings signing off. Tonight, you've been listening to Warriors Live after the Warriors one last time fall to 10-3 overall after a 102-99 defeat to the Los Angeles Clippers in LA. We'll talk to you on Wednesday. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your evening. You'll listen to the Warriors wrap-up on 95.7 The Game.
Final 8 games went 5-3, which isn't great, but when they were 1-7, 5-3 is pretty good. So he kept the job for 9